If you have something in your life that you truly feel very passionate about and it's really important to you, or if you have something that's truly personal, zip it. Shut up about it and tell nobody. A private life is a happy life. The less you reveal about things happening in your life, especially if they haven't happened yet, the better. Privacy is a power. It's strategy. You should only reveal things when they serve you and help you in your brand positioning. Because when you build in silence, your enemies don't know what to attack. And if you don't tell anyone what you're working on, then nobody's energy can muddy your focus. But unfortunately, we live in that type of world where not everyone has your best interests at heart. And the more information someone knows about you, the more they can take any of your perceived weaknesses and use that against you. Don't forget, this is like a golden rule. If people gossip with you, they are going to gossip about you. And as someone who has been personally betrayed by so many different people over years of different kinds of situations, I finally learned my lesson. And it's not even always personal. It's a tactical strategy, the art of war. For example, someone who secretly hates you can take information about you, go to an authority that's above you, and then give that information to them and then say, look, she's going through a lot right now. She's clearly very troubled. There's something going on there. Obviously, she can't remain in this environment with the rest of us. You need to get rid of her. And that's only one way that your hidden enemies can destroy you. Notice how I say hidden enemies and secret haters. You don't actually know who secretly hates you, so you need to learn how to protect yourself and stop blindly trusting everyone. In this video, I'm going to help you uncover in what ways you might be vulnerably oversharing, as well as how to reveal things about yourself strategically in a way that will only benefit you. And by the way, hi, my name is May and welcome to my channel. So I teach you how to become your best self physically, mentally, and spiritually. So if you want to improve your life, give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you like my vibe. By the way, this is the last week that you can get my manifestation guide on achieving positive outcomes for free on my Patreon as an Archangel subscriber. And I drop free guides every month to my Archangel tier Patreon subscribers, as well as give them shout outs to my videos. And then after that, they'll be on my digital shop. So if you want to grab this guide for free, you can subscribe to my Patreon as an Archangel tier member. And then by the end of this week or next week, I'm going to be dropping my glow up guide. So stay tuned. So let's get back into it. So I remember just feeling so embarrassed and guilty for talking too much. Even worse, I gave too much of myself away. And because I gave too much of myself away, I looked weak. And this used to be a huge issue for me personally, where as a result, I felt powerless almost every single day because I was too vulnerable with everyone. Maybe it's a trait of being a Cancer sun, and I'm feeling it now, especially because it's Cancer season, but I'm not so much feeling like I'm sad to be vulnerable. It's more so feeling angry, like how dare people use my very nature against me? And I'm talking about my natural need for expressing myself and my way of showing my love to people by expressing my emotions and showing vulnerability. So I realized that I had this really toxic habit of just vulnerably oversharing. And this especially happened after a while of just not having access to therapy, as well as feeling rejected and isolated. I would just project myself onto everyone, as well as my insecurities onto the people that I would meet intentionally. I would sometimes trauma dump on people, maybe just to be edgy, I don't know, or to make it look like I was having the worst time, or at least a worse time than everyone else in the room. So I remember this specifically when I was working at a place and I had a few coworkers I was friends with because we all had the same kind of like trauma bond of being in a bad work environment. But in the end, the reality was that I had actually overshared a lot more about my own personal trauma than just workplace related trauma. And they just didn't really say anything about it. Maybe it was just a way for me to feel more accepted by people and to get closer to them, but only in the way that I knew how, because at the time I knew my trauma better than anything else in my life. And it was something that I was the most familiar with. So I thought, okay, maybe this is how I bond with people. And what really hit the nail on the head for me was that I was actually forcing intimacy too fast by being too vulnerable, when I should have just been focusing on building trust instead. And maybe I just make people around me feel uncomfortable through the vulnerability that I was sharing. And I had actually no idea how to read exactly when, whether it's in a friendship or a relationship, what kind of self-disclosure is actually appropriate. But now I have an extremely clear picture of what that looks like. Only share things with people that you can trust will not betray you, which honestly in this world is very few people, because not everyone deserves deserves your personal information. Not everyone deserves your vulnerability. Most people don't. So they shouldn't have the privilege of hearing about your inner struggles. Be very careful of, I would say, like 98% of people. Not all of your friends are your true friends. In fact, there will always be certain people who will call themselves your friends whose only real purpose is to just harvest data about you. They want to hear how you are and what's going on in your life so that they can then take that information about you and start shopping it around with other people and make themselves look like they know about everyone's business. I call these type of friends data harvesters because somehow every single conversation that you have with them ends up in you divulging information about yourself, and then a couple weeks later you hear about it from someone else in a way that may or may not benefit you, but most of the time it does not benefit you. For example, if person A is like, did you hear May just started this new thing lately? Yeah, she told me that she felt really insecure about it. Person B would then be like, oh yeah, let me see it. Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah, maybe she should feel insecure about it. You see what I mean? You may be opening yourself up to potential scrutiny and maybe even the evil eye from people who you might not even know. Again, like, I don't know if I necessarily believe in the evil eye or not. I would just rather be protective about it. But if someone who you might not even know, who might be a stranger, they tell that information to them, if they somehow know about it, then that friend who told it doesn't know how to shut up about it either. And you shouldn't trust them. You need to know that you are controlling your information, because just maybe that person that you told it to is also a chronic oversharer, but instead of violating their own privacy, they are violating your privacy. This is how gossip spreads. Someone who will get with you just to talk crap with you will talk crap about you later. People, even those who barely know you, but of course they think they know you, will then try to get into your business. So is it really necessary for you to pour out all of your own thoughts and fears and personal needs to someone else? The less people know about you, the less power they will have over you. I've had instances where people would seek out information about me and then use it as a weapon against me and to cause my downfall. I know this sounds dramatic, but it has happened to me enough times for me to be on my guard. And I don't want to see this happening to you. If you don't know how to properly approach things when it comes to interacting with people, I will advise you to first approach it from a way that protects you rather than to leave your guard down. Because the truth is, some people out there are just bad actors and they truly just love to ruin lives because they want to see people suffer, because their own lives are so out of control, they want to control other people's lives by causing their downfall. And clearly they have some issues of their own, but unless they decide to be better for themselves, they are going to keep hurting the people around them, and that could be you. And the thing is, you won't always know who these people are. Prioritize yourself. Privacy matters a lot for a happy and secure life. You should always make it your goal to cultivate a private life that belongs to only you, a rich inner life. Do things that make you happy that only you know about, in your own time, under your conditions, only your conditions. And this will allow you to maintain power, autonomy, and control over your life and over your personal information, which can also include things about like who you are, what you do, your favorite hobbies, your activities, your relationships. Being private and staying low-key and not telling everyone everything is in itself a form of self-care. When you overshare, you leak energy, so people can then use your struggles to drain you even further. And when you share too much about yourself, you're just opening up yourself for debate. Because whenever you're sharing something, someone's going to form their own personal opinions about it and then maybe try and convince you out of doing something. Do you want to be swayed by other people's opinions? Not only that, if you stay private, you're telling yourself it's okay to be alone. Sometimes it's even better to be alone than to be surrounded by the wrong people and to always feeling like you have to answer to people and to feel trapped by it. And honestly, and I learned this from being alone, the less people you deal with, the less drama you're going to encounter, the more alone time you can get for yourself. That is time for yourself. And I think that some people really underestimate alone time, or they're afraid of it. It's actually such a precious thing. Most of us don't even get a whole lot of alone time, and you will have less and less of it later on as you get older and you start having more responsibilities to deal with, like being married, having kids, things like that. When you stay private, you don't invite or owe anyone any kind of explanation. You start putting yourself and your own happiness first instead. Privacy is going to remove the stress of waiting for validation from everyone else, and you no longer care about what people think about you since they don't know anything about it. Oversharing also makes it so that your story owns you, instead of it being the other way around, which it should be. And what do I mean by this? Because when your pain feels real to you, which it often does, it can also feel like the entire world sees something wrong with you. And this is also why people overshare, so that they can reveal their pain. So detach. You need to detach from your story owning you and instead realize that you can own your story. If you find yourself doing this either to gain pity or to fast track intimacy in a relationship, you need to learn to forgive yourself and give yourself some grace, because nobody else can show you grace the way that you can to yourself, and also the way that the universe or God can. Like, I am a huge believer in only sharing something about myself only after it's happened, especially my successes or something that I'm working towards, like a new project or a new hobby. Definitely not before you even start, because people are going to project their thoughts onto you. And also scientifically, if you share something before you even start, it actually gives you the same sense of satisfaction that you've already done it before you even started. The only person you should really overshare with is with your therapist. But even then, be strategic about it. By oversharing with anyone else, you're subconsciously succumbing to any kind of chaos or problems in your life. I always used to over-explain, and it makes me look weak and powerless, because I'm constantly trying to justify everything that I say, everything that I do. So there's actually a book called The 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene. I learned so much in this book about how to actually gain power over myself and become more respectable from this book. So I will link it somewhere in my description if you want to check it out. But anyway, in this book, the fourth law is to always say less than necessary. And if you're over-explaining yourself a lot, you're probably very guilty of violating this fourth law by saying more than you should. So I figured out a technique that worked for me, and it's called like the poke technique. So before I go over this technique, I wanted to share what will happen if you tend to over-explain. Over-explain will make it so that you are nervous, not self-aware, or not aware of what's happening around you. And if that person didn't ask for your explanation, you might even sound like a know-it-all, or you might sound condescending if they already know about it. And most of all, over-explaining shows a perceived lack of confidence. Yeah, so none of these things are actually good things. So the poking technique is a very simple technique. You can use it in like professional settings or even non-professional settings. So let's go over both of it. So for example, if someone asks like, hey, how's your day going? You don't need to explain every single part of your day. Instead, you're poking. Give an ambiguous answer. Just be like, yeah, it's good. It's going good. Because most of the time, this other person might not even want to know anything else beyond the fact that your day is good. But if they do want to know more about it, they will ask a question. But most of the time they're just being nice. You can say something like, oh, I went out with some friends, it was nice. And they'll say in one or two ways, either, oh, that sounds fun. So you can hear in this response that didn't actually poke back at you, so you don't need to explain yourself even further. Or, they might say something like, oh, where did you guys go? I'm looking for something new to do. What do you recommend? Like, what did you guys do? In this case, they poke back. So you can go ahead and explain more. Oh, I went to this place, I tried this new restaurant, and so on. And then in a professional setting, you can maybe explain a little bit more work-wise, but you can say things like, did this make sense to you? I'll be happy to explain more if you need more clarity. So that if they want to know more, they will poke back and say, oh, yes, please. Can you please tell me more? This is so that you don't sound condescending, you don't sound like a know-it-all, and you're not yapping at someone unsolicited. This technique is now super automatic for me, and I no longer feel embarrassed about myself, and I feel a lot more in control of my words and in control of the conversation. It's actually one of the most effective things that you can apply pretty much immediately. And then there's the listening technique. So you need to switch gears here, and instead of being the one pouring your heart out, you're the one listening instead. People will tend to give you a lot of information if they are the one doing most of the talking and not you. So this is a very good method. I'm personally trying to work on this more by trying to ask more of the right questions. And I tend to ramble sometimes, but I'm also a bit of a yapper, and I'm trying to learn how to be better. But people always appreciate when you ask them about themselves and you put more space in the conversation. But of course, you're also trying to be mindful of other people's needs to be seen and heard, and that's a good thing. By the way, this also reminds me of a good quote, which says, your problem isn't that you think too much. Your problem is that everyone knows what you're thinking. So this was a big problem for me in some of my relationships, because most of the time, me using knowledge and common sense or whatever doesn't always equate a good thing, even if it's the truth. And it's like I said in my villain era video, people can't stand to hear the truth. In some way or form, everyone only cares about their own power and respect and whether it's increasing or decreasing. But don't we all? So win through your actions instead, never by arguments. I have learned so much lately just by saying less and taking more action. Because people may lie. Words are free, but actions never lie. So people will see that you live by your actions, which is way more trustworthy than just saying things. Sometimes all of us need to vent. But when you need to vent, don't do it with people you know or just anyone that you know. This is why therapy is important. And I know that not everyone can afford therapy, so hear me out. I know a lot of us tend to go to our family to vent about our relationships. This isn't really an issue if it's only once in a while, but sometimes if this becomes often enough that it becomes a pattern, boundaries might be crossed. Venting to your family about your relationship can cause quite a few deep issues because one, your family will never be objective with you. Two, they may not have healthy or fulfilling relationships themselves, and any kind of unsolicited advice they may give you might not be good for you. And number three, this can also change the way that they view you because they may have some of their own perspectives about you and your relationships that you don't even know about, and you can't escape it because they are your family. And number four, and I mentioned this a few seconds ago, but this will open you up to unsolicited advice. When we vent to people, we're getting advice based on their own experiences. So it's actually worth asking yourself if whoever you're venting to in the first place actually has the correct kind of experience and is in the correct space to guide you towards healthier relationship dynamics. It's also really important to have a conversation with your partner about what they're comfortable with you sharing. Both of you can and should be creating the kind of like boundaries around what you will and will not share together. Because it can really feel like betrayal when you learn that a partner has shared something that you're not even comfortable with sharing with other people, especially if they only share their side of the story and not your side of the story. So now you feel like you have to defend yourself. We all need boundaries to feel safe. Sharing too much about our own intimate relationships with our family members can undermine a lot of trust and just cause unnecessary kind of like triangulation and overcomplicate a lot of things. And this doesn't just apply to family members, this applies to like friends and anyone else. Self-reflection and also some outside perspective from other people can be healthy options, but it can also create some kinds of like uncomfortable situations and interactions where you feel judged or where family starts to become resentful of hearing about your problems, and it can also be incredibly damaging to your relationships if you get to a close family member, like especially if it's about something that could be more serious and they turn you away and they tell you that you don't have a refuge with them. For example, if you have a fight with a partner, you might eventually forgive your partner after like a minor argument, but it might actually take a lot more time for your family to forgive your partner because they don't have the full side of the story, aside from what you're already telling them. So don't involve them at all unless you're in a very toxic relationship and you're trying to leave. Because family can get very defensive, and even long after you leave the situation or the family, like they will still hold on to that same emotion. They don't actually see the daily interaction, they don't actually see what's going on. And also most people try to seek help and support in the form of like seeking validation, but really they probably just need perspectives that balances them instead. Again, talk to a therapist. Venting to family or friends can actually bias their own opinion as well as your own perspectives on the situation. Relationships are like spaghetti. They're messy when you bring the entire family into it. So be very careful of who you are venting to and understand that this will have an impact on your relationship. And if you don't have access to a therapist, a good person to vent to would be someone who's actually already in a healthy relationship and the correct person to guide you along and has the correct perspectives and won't tell your business to everyone. So in this case, a good person to vent to would be someone who's already in a good relationship, a healthy relationship, someone who you actually will trust your information with, who won't share or gossip about you. But this can be really risky, so make sure that you can really trust this person. Or sometimes this might even look like people you don't know. Like for example, my Discord community is very supportive. Like we stay helping each other get through tough times and to celebrate our wins. But I highly recommend venting to someone who is less biased, like a life coach or a therapist. And as you guys may know, I use the meditation app called Aura to go to sleep every night. Like I listen to the affirmations and hypnosis while I sleep to retrain my mind. But they also offer therapy services. Like they have coaches online who can be there to give you the proper kind of therapy that you may need to realize things about yourself and to help you with your healing process. Even if you're not interested in formal therapy, they also have a lot of therapy-related coaching content that's created by hundreds of experts. So if you want to try this out, you can sign up for a free 7-day trial, my link in the video. But setting boundaries is so important in order to become successful in living a life of privacy as well as, well, success, you need to learn how to set boundaries. So this will help you promote more mutual respect and healthier relationships by clearly defining the kind of boundaries in which that people can interact with you. So what kind of treatment is okay with you and what isn't. You need to be able to define this for yourself and communicate it properly. And the communication part is important because nobody else can read your mind. Maybe I'll go through how to set proper boundaries in another video. We can talk about it in detail, but you need to make it clear. If someone is doing or saying something that you're not comfortable with, even if it's your boss or your mom or your lifelong partner or your bestie, by everyone, I mean everyone. Setting correct boundaries for all of our relationships can protect everyone involved, as well as their emotional well-being, and ensure healthier communication and respect. Okay, like for example, let's talk mama's boys. Like I dated a man in his 20s who told his parents everything, and this is a grown man. And any kind of problem that we had, he went to them and to his mom. And clearly, because he's their son and not my son, he was never wrong in their eyes. So I look very evil. Be so careful of dating mama's boys whose lives are so enmeshed with their moms, because you're in a relationship with not only him, but also his mother. So there's one last point that I want to make. A lot of people feel like solidarity means having secrecy, which it's not true. And what true solidarity means is not being at war with each other or our own like negative behavior and habits. We need to be working on ourselves in order to show up for other people and be a unit fighting to become our best selves for one another. And that should be what true solidarity should look like. Not telling each other our secrets, not being overly vulnerable. Know the difference. And guys, I hope that this was helpful for you today. And I truly hope that this will help you properly define your boundaries and be able to protect yourself more by keeping to yourself a secret life, a private life, a happy life, which will make it a successful one. So yeah, like and subscribe if you enjoyed my video, and I will see you in the next one.